Grace, mercy, and peace to you from God our Heavenly Father and His Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. This was a hard lesson. I read the Timothy lesson, and obviously it's difficult because Timothy's reading this knowing that he's supposed to take this up and he may be killed as well. And then the gospel is increase our faith. Increase our faith, and he isn't very nice to him about it. And I realize that I think every lesson I have to give a message on is difficult. And as I start through that, like I read, this was in Luke 17, I read from 10 on to get the background of this. And I realized that if you read the Bible enough, which I will admit I don't, they're all difficult. These are difficult lessons. Jesus asked a lot of us. In this one, basically they're saying, increase our faith. Now, why are they saying that? Okay, here in the 6 verses before this gospel, here's what he asked them. Love the Lord and love your neighbor. Okay, that's fine. We can do that, although I have a couple neighbors. It's very difficult to do. The Good Samaritan, that story, yeah, we all think we can take care of the person. And then there was Mary and Martha, which made no sense because Mary was lazy. And Martha was working hard, and he rewarded Mary, which, okay, that seemed kind of backwards. And then he said, true, they can kill you, but then what else can they do? There's nothing they can do to your soul. Go ahead and stand up for me. Oh my God, how uplifting is that? They can kill you, but that's it. All right, sure. Then he also said, but if you pretend you don't know me, do you think I'll defend you before God angels? Right? There's a story about the rich man. He built 3 barns, and that night he dies. Okay, he thought he was doing good. He died. And this one, steep yourself in God's world. Don't worry about earthly things like food and clothing. You'll find all your everyday human concerns will be met. The lilies of the valley thing, they all look good, Don't worry about that. Be generous, give to the poor. Sure. Okay, the servant who knows what his master wants to ignore us will be thoroughly thrashed. And the lesson I gave about a month ago, sit at the worst seating table, and when you have a party, invite all those other people. The ones you don't want to invite. Okay, you got to do that. So therefore, none of you can become my disciple if you not give up all of your possessions. These are all things he said in the 6 chapters leading up to that. There's the prodigal son where the bad guy went away. He came back and we loved him. And then there was the one where the crooked, useless, and worthless manager. That one we had 2 weeks ago. There was that story where we rewarded the crooked manager. There was the rich man and Lazarus with Teresa talked last week, which made no sense. And in this one he says, anyone who comes to me but refuses it wasn't that your lesson didn't make any sense, right? Anyone who comes to me but refuses father, mother, spouse, children, brothers, sisters, just even one's own self, can't be my disciple. And then there's, of course, today's lesson. I'm going to be put to death, and you might be too, but it's all good. Okay? That is what he told them leading up to this. It's not a surprise that he asked for more faith. This was going to be very difficult for them. His answer? Did he reassure them? No. He said, if you had the faith the size of a mustard seed, you could pick up that tree and throw it into the ocean. Okay, chastising them more, I think. Was he reassuring them? I think he didn't respond as they liked, that's for sure. And then even worse, he said that story about if a slave comes in, do you thank him? No, you don't thank him. He's doing what he's supposed to do. By the way, the word was changed in later ones to servant because the slave gets too many things, in there. But you don't thank him for doing what he's supposed to do. In other words, okay guys, you're going to do these things I ask of you. Don't expect to be thanked. It's just what you're supposed to do. This is not what I would call good news. Pastor Gene talks about the gospel as being good news. And where is the good news here? He says you're going to do a lot of things. You have to have a lot of faith. You might get put to death. Everything's going to be horrible. And no one's going to thank you for it. Oh boy, yeah, that's really good news. Yeah, sign me up. Yeah, I want to be a Christian. Woo, yeah. But there is obviously some good news. But we have the same question. How do we increase our faith? And in fact, a few years ago, I remember I came into Pastor Gene's office back at the mothership, and I asked her that very question. Because when you talk to Pastor Gene, no matter what's going good or bad for her, you know that her faith does not waver. Okay, she has that strong faith. And I said, you have that faith. How do I get that kind of faith? It was almost the same question. I was trying to figure things out. Trust me, I wasn't giving any messages at that time, that's for sure. But a lot of things happened. We talked about a lot of things happened. First of all, I hung around other Christians. Okay? And these people have influence on me. You know, you are who you hang out with. There's some story about that, you know. Every mother says his boy's a good boy, he's just hanging around with the other bad kids. The other ones are always bad, you know, never my son. But if you hang around with the people who think like that, you will start to think like that. I joined the small groups. I led some small groups. Those are incredibly helpful. Because rather than just sitting here, like Teresa says, we should respond back, and somehow I always say we're going to do that, and somehow I just talk and talk and talk. But in a small group, you do share those things. I read a lot, the Bible, some other things. I questioned a lot. Those of you who know me, it shouldn't surprise you, I did a lot of questions. I even sang some songs I wasn't sure about. At that point, Sunfire was me, Julie, Pastor Gene, and Karen. That was the band. And I was still questioning a lot of things, and maybe I've told you a story before, but they wanted me in the band, and I said, I'm not sure where my faith is. And are you trying? I said, yes, I am trying. He said, okay, then let's go with it. And it was amazing how much performing the songs, singing those songs, really singing them makes a difference. Okay, you're not just, because I always sang the hymns, you just went along and wish the thing would get over, you know, with the 7 verses, really. You know, that's how I looked at the songs, and Pat does too, right? You know, and it just gets through them. But once you listen to them and really sing them, whether you're sitting at the piano, sitting here, or sitting right back there, when you really sing them, it makes a difference. It did to me anyway. And those 3 people allowing me to be in this group made a huge difference. You know, I mean, I really got on well. You know, the band was done, and you know, these are 3 of my good friends. I like them; they're nice people, you know, and so hang out with them. But it made a huge difference. You know, I also took a lot of risks. I did some things that I wasn't sure of, things faith-wise, some other chances I took, and my faith has increased. I'm not saying it's huge, but it has increased. All right, that's going to make a difference. I'm trying to see what I got here. 7 pair of glasses. The other thing, the next thing is, you're here. You're all here this morning. You could be doing something else. You must have some faith. You're here. Do you ever pray by yourself? Don't answer that. You can if you want, but most of you do. Praying in public to show people you believe something or saying something in public is one thing, but when you're by yourself, when you're the only one there, if you're saying a prayer, why else would you be doing it? You're not doing it to impress anyone, no one's there. If you're saying a prayer to God at that point, when you're by yourself, there's some faith in there somewhere. There's no other reason it would be there. Now, it may not be the faith the size of a mountain, but you have something there. There's just 3 of them in there. But you do those things. And like I said, every one of you is here. And I don't know if you pray when you're on your own, but a lot of you do. But even if not, you're here. And unless you're like here because your wife makes you come, you know, other than that, you must have some faith. All right, and so, yeah, it would be nice to have more faith, but you have some faith. All right, that's the first thing. Faith doesn't always have to move mountains, though. When I read that last part of the gospel, it said, do you thank your servant for doing what he's supposed to do? No. It sounded almost like a criticism. Well, I've told you before, there's a pastor named David Lowe's who I read and I get inspiration from, and so does Catherine, so does Pastor Gene. He has a different interpretation. And he looked at that line a little bit like this. Faith, as Jesus describes it, is just doing your job. Just doing your duty. Not because of any sense of reward, but simply because it needs doing. Faith, in other words, is doing what needs to be done right in front of you, and this, Jesus says, the disciples can already do. That's a whole different way to look at it. Much more reassuring. Have I ever told you about my Uncle Chuck? Uncle Chuck passed away 4 or 5 years ago, maybe? Yeah. He was my mother's sister's husband. Okay. Uncle Chuck was a good guy. He worked at a cement factory in Dundee all his life, hung out with his family, did a lot of hunting, fishing. Uncle Chuck never aspired to be a great man. I know that. I didn't have that talk with him, but I know he never said, I'm going to be a great man. I'm going to make a difference in people's lives. That wasn't what he was. But he was a good guy. If I needed something, he would help me. If the person down the road he never met before needed something, he would help him and probably give him a beer while he's doing it too. Okay? And he was always friendly. I never heard him badmouth anybody. I'm sure he did, but I never did. He was just a good guy. At his funeral, instead of cake and ice cream or whatever, we had beer and pizza. Okay? Because he wanted us to have fun. And that will be at my funeral too, by the way. I got that from Uncle Chuck. But he never aspired for greatness. But when he passed away, I realized he did little things. He was good to his neighbor. He was good to his family. He helped you whenever he could. He never had a bad word. Those are little things. And by doing those little things, he really was a great man. Never tried. Just happened. I never thought about Uncle Chuck that much when he was alive. Okay, if we go up and see him, that's fine. But after he died, I realized what we were missing at this point. And I hadn't caught that before. Now, I'm not saying this is what he was doing with faith. This is how he's treating other people, but the same thing works with faith. At least I believe it does. We can try to move mountains, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what about the little things? There's little things that need to be done. Okay, volunteer. I talk about volunteering in the coffee shop, but there's other places. You want to help people? Call Wood County Hospital. They need people all the time. Okay, call the Park District. They're dying for volunteers. Call United Way. They all need volunteers to do good things. Or how about that guy down the street that you don't like? Take him a plate of cookies rather than throw eggs at his house. Okay, you probably don't throw eggs at his house, but you know what I mean. Okay, how about when we've all had this, when that weird person comes and wants to talk, and we just don't want to talk to them. If they are a little different, they're also probably pretty lonely. One of the person who looks up in the coffee shop has a customer that comes in periodically and talks and talks and talks. And I know that is, it's a good thing that person does, because that person who talks is a lonely person. I know it. Okay, he doesn't always say it, but you know it is. And someone's talking to him and caring about him. That's not a huge thing, but it is to that person. It's not changing the world, but it's helping that one person. There's a lot of things you can do. When a friend is having a hard time, give her a hug. Well, I hugged. That's good. Or maybe it's not a friend. Maybe you can't go up and hug a stranger, but you can do the same kind of thing. There's lots of things you can do, and you do those because A, it's the right thing to do, and because Jesus asked us to do this. He asked us to be good to our fellow men. He asked us to treat people like this. I'm not saying ignore the big things. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying not to do huge faith things. I am saying don't be afraid to do those. Take some chances. But I'm saying we aren't always all put in that position where we can do huge works of faith. We can't all be Mother Teresa, but we can all be Uncle Chuck. We can do that. Okay, he did the little things. And we can do that too. Now, if you are in a position where there's a mountain moving moment and you're afraid you're not going to faith, go for it anyway. Take that chance. Take that chance and go try to do it. The song we're doing, the message song, the one we're doing in a minute, it's got both parts. It's got the huge things and it's got the small things. The chorus is up next. This is the part that Pastor Gene sings. We can't cover the song. The three of us. I sing part, Julie sings part, Pastor Gene sings part because we don't have enough range. And she sings the big parts. I've seen dreams that move the mountains. Hope that doesn't ever end, even when the sky is falling. I've seen miracles just happen. Silent prayers get answered. Broken hearts become brand new. That's what faith can do. Those are big things. Don't be afraid to do those. Don't be afraid to try those. If you fail, you fail. I mean, when Timothy failed, he was going to be put to death. Most of us don't face that. Julie was telling a story in practice this morning about Jeremy Camp. He went to some country which starts with a B, which you can't remember what it is, where you weren't allowed to be Christian. And he gave a Christian concert. No one was allowed to come, but 8,000 people came. And he took a huge chance. He could have been jailed and imprisoned, and so could those people. But it was one of his most rewarding concerts. Do I have the story right? Most rewarding concerts ever because of the circumstances. That was a huge mountain-moving moment. We aren't all Jeremy Camp. We don't all have those moments. But when it came, he wasn't afraid to do it. He trusted that God would be with him. He knew that he might get imprisoned, or worse, but he took that chance. If you do have a little bit of faith, you'll know that God is with you, whether it feels like it or not. And if the worst things happen, He's still going to be there. I read a story one time about a woman who was in some kind of home. And she was blind. She had multiple issues. Everything was wrong with her. And she was always smiling. And someone asked her why, and she said, "This isn't the best life in the world, but Jesus is waiting for me." That was faith. I don't know if I can do that. In fact, I know I can't. Someone told me the other day I'm a horrible pessimist. Maybe I am. I think it depends on what kind of things you're looking at. But I don't smile through everything. I know I don't. And I will admit, I have a lot of doubts in my faith. I've always made that clear, but I really think that God's waiting for me. Jesus is helping me through this, even if it's not what I want right here. The verse on that one, this is the part I sing. And by the way, these two lines I think are some of the best lines ever written in any song. It doesn't matter what you've heard. Right here. Impossible is not a word. It's just a reason for someone not to try. Everybody's scared to death. When they decide to take that step out in the water, it'll be all right. All right? He's not talking about moving mountains. He's talking about just doing things. We're all scared of that. But it'll be okay. You know, I mean, a lot of things, like I said, take the cookies down to the guy down the street. Maybe that seems trite, but I don't know. You'd feel funny doing it, but he would appreciate it. Pies are good, too. And then the bridge is what Julie sings, and that kind of, the words aren't up there. You'll have to listen to her sing it, but that is the point of the whole song. So make sure you listen to that when we sing that song next. And do you have to increase your faith? There's a good chance you have enough. You just don't know it. You don't have to do great things. You have to do little things. It doesn't, again, you don't have to move mountains. Just do little things. Everyone can't be Mother Teresa. But we can all be Uncle Chuck. Just do little things. That's what faith can do. Amen.